afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another iStore Meeting session. We've got a really exciting one lined up for this afternoon, and it's all about creating amazing spreadsheets with numbers and how easy it actually is to use the numbers application. But before we get started, just a few things to cover. So I would love for you to interact and engage with me throughout the session. So make use of the chat and Q&A options within Zoom. And maybe even right now, let me know where you are joining from. I can already see in the poll people joining from all over, but you can also let me know what the weather's like. It's been really, really cold today in Joburg. We had such a nice and warm weekend, and all of a sudden it is just freezing here. But let me know what it's like on your side. I would really love to know. If you've got any questions related to the session, you're welcome to pop it in the Q&A and I will get to them during or at the end of our workshop. Should you want to become a host of your own, you're also welcome to send us an email to the email address that you can currently see on the screen and share with the world about the Apple products that you love most. Now, talking about sharing, if you've learned anything either from this workshop or any of our other workshops for that matter, post it on social media using the hashtag iStoreMeet and stand a chance to win some amazing prizes from the iStore. Now, who would not want that? And then lastly, before we start off our session, at the bottom, you will also find all of our social media handles for Facebook, Instagram, as well as our brand new YouTube channel, where you can also find some other amazing tips and tricks for all of your Apple products. This video will also be available on there really soon, so do keep an eye on our YouTube channel if you want to go and rewatch or learn a little bit more. Now, I think that is it from an intro side. Like I mentioned, my name is Alex, and I'm going to be your host for this afternoon. And yeah, we're just going to jump directly into it. So give me 1 second to just share up my screen here, and we should then almost be ready to get started. Now, let me just remove all of that there. There we go. All right. So I've already opened up the Numbers application, but Numbers is this app right here. And as I've mentioned earlier on, it is a free application that you can download from the App Store if you don't already have it on your Mac. Now, as soon as you open it up, you get greeted with this screen right here. And a lot of people always wonder, like, why would it open up in a screen that looks like this? I mean, this is not the screen that you would generally see when you open up a application to help you create spreadsheets. Well, the reason is that even before you start creating your document, you can say where you want it to be saved. Do you want it to be saved on your iCloud so that it's available on all of your devices, on your desktop, whatever it may be? So it's great to know that even before you start creating your spreadsheet, you know exactly where you'll save it. Now, once you're ready, you can literally just tap on New Document, and it's just very quickly going to go and open up the template chooser in Numbers. Now, as soon as we're there, you'll notice that there is a bunch of amazing templates, right? So there's some basic ones for tables and charts, some charting basics. There's even personal finance ones if you want to create like a bit of a budget for yourself. There's one for a calendar. Want to create your own calendar? It's right there. There's business-related ones for like an employee schedule, an invoice that you might want to create. Educational ones for an attendance report, whatever it may be. If you think of it, it is there already for you. Now, before we jump into what we're going to do for today, I'm going to show you how easy it is to use these templates. So I'm going to open up this employee schedule one right here. And you'll notice that as soon as it opens up, immediately we've got this user-friendly layout in front of us, right? So I can see that this is the entire employee schedule, and everything here, I can then literally just edit to go and add in my own information. Now, I've got a bunch of things here, like the lunch break is an hour long, the weekly hours are 5 hours, and then overtime pay is calculated at 150%. But if I want to change that, I can literally just click on it and go and add in my own information. Now, let's actually go in here and add some more information here, right? So if there's maybe another person that joined your team, you can literally just type in their details here. Right, so like that. And also this person is also another sales rep. And as you can see, as soon as I've added that in, look at the bottom there. It's started filling in that person's details. All I then still need to go and do is literally just go and add in their hourly rate. So let's say their hourly rate is 20 Rand, right? And then the total hours that John worked was, let's say, 8 hours as well. And as soon as I do that, notice at the bottom in that graph and table, everything has been calculated for me. I don't need to go and do anything. It's already been done for me. I just need to go and fill in my information. So it's really, really easy to then just create or add your own information using these amazing templates available for you. Now I'm just going to go and create a new one. So I'm going to go Command N to create a new blank template for us. Now, this is where we're going to start our session off. And before we do, let's just quickly talk about the layout and overview that we can see in numbers. Now, like I mentioned earlier on, any questions, pop them in the Q&A and I'll get to them during or at the end of our workshop. So it's very easy. It's a very easy, very simple layout that you see in front of you. Now, if you maybe compare this to any other like spreadsheet application that you use, this is really, nothing is hidden away. You don't have to click onto one banner to open up more settings or options. It's all right here in front of you. And the great thing is in our format bar on the side here, it is actually what we call a smart format bar. So depending on what you add or have in your spreadsheet is going to determine what you see, right? So if I select my entire table, it's going to be related to my table. If I enter into a cell, it's going to be related to a cell. If there's an image, it's going to be related to that image. So I never really have to worry about where am I going to find the formatting options for that. And I will explore all of these a little bit later on as well as going into more detail with like cell settings, text, as well as arrangement. But right next to that, we've got collaboration, and we will also talk about this closer to the end of our session because it kind of comes hand in hand when we're maybe done with our spreadsheet and we want to start sharing it out to people. Right next to that, we've got comments, which we will also discuss a little bit later on. We've got our media, should we want to add any media or photos from our library, using our iPhones or iPads even to maybe scan or add a sketch in. Shapes, there's text, there's charts, which we will explore, tables, which we will explore, inserting like functions and formulas, adding categories, zooming. Now you can also zoom in and out using your finger on your trackpad or magic mouse, depending on you. And then there's a view option right here. And if you select that, you'll see that you then get options to show your rulers, hide your comments, and so much more. Now, I mean, we literally took about a minute to just cover this entire layout. So it's really, really great to know that it's very easy to understand how numbers work. And I think the biggest benefit of this is that you never really have to worry about, but what if I forget what I learned, right? Because there's this wonderful help tool in your menu bar on top, right there, help. And if you maybe don't know where to find, oh, Alex mentioned something like if you want to copy, you do Command C, and if you want to paste, you do Command V. But if you can't remember something like that, all you have to do is open up that help option, search for what you're looking for. Let's say you don't know how to paste, and you hover your cursor on top of that word, and this big blue button appears, and it's like, hello, here I am, right here. And right next to it, notice that little alien language that kind of like appears there. Now that is your shortcut, right? So Command V to paste, Command C to copy, like I just mentioned. So it's very, very easy to even go and find these things if you're not sure where they are. And there we go, right? So that is the help option. We've spoken about these toolbars and the layout in numbers. Now let's get started. So I generally like to refer to numbers as a bit of a blank canvas because the possibilities in numbers are endless. And I'm going to show you why, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and delete this table that we currently have here so that we can start completely afresh. Now, if you want to delete a table in numbers, notice on the top right-hand corner, left-hand corner, sorry, there's a little circle, right? And if you select that, that selects your entire table that you have, and you can then use that to move it around. Or once it's selected, you can press backspace and delete it. Now that is what I wanted to do. So what I'm going to do is I want to put like a bit of a banner on top to tell us what this is all about, right? I want to be a little bit more creative with my spreadsheet than literally just seeing numbers. So let's do that. I'm going to do that by adding in a shape into our spreadsheet. So I'm going to go to shapes, and I'm kind of happy with this square that we've got right here. I'm, however, going to make it a little bit smaller like that. Maybe move it to the top, and then notice that line that appears. So now I know when I want to print this out, it's going to be right on top of the page. I don't have to worry about something like that. And I'm going to then do the same thing by literally just moving it to the corner. So that now I also know it is in line with the beginning of my page as well. Great. Now, what I want to do is I want to make this bigger, but notice it kind of like moves around, right? So once you've actually centered something and you want to make sure that it stays center, all you have to do is hold down on your Option key, and that would then kind of like move it in both directions. So you never have to really worry about, is it then still going to be in line? Now I'm kind of happy with that. There we go. And just like that, we now have a bit of a banner. And like I mentioned, in the formatting bar, notice how it changed. We don't have anything related to a table or a chart anymore. It's now all about the style of this banner that we just added in. So I'm going to go and change the color to maybe that blue that we've got right there. And I want to go and add in text inside of this. Now, to do something like that, a lot of people would probably go and add like a text box and then just drop it on top of that. Well, because this is numbers, all you have to do is double click inside of your shape that you've added, and you can then tell us what this is all about. So we're going to look at some bridges for this session, right? So there we go. We're going to look at these bridges. I do find that the text is a little bit too small, so I'm going to go and just select it all, and I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger. All right, there we go. I'm happy with that. So now we know what this is all about. And it's very easy to see, okay, we're focusing on bridges for this specific spreadsheet, right? So let's start by maybe adding in some images so that it's a little bit more interactive, this entire spreadsheet that we're creating. Now I've already gone and saved a few images. It's up to you where you want to find these images or save them or how you want to use it. Like I mentioned earlier on, you can use the media option right here to go into like your Photos app and then getting pictures from there, whatever it may be. There's taking photos, scanning documents from your iPhone or iPad if you have an iPhone or iPad to use. But like I mentioned, I've already gone and saved these things. So I'm just going to go and open up my Finder. And as you can see, there's like this entire folder just called Numbers Session. And inside of it, I've got a bunch of photos. Now, I actually want to use this one right here. So I'm going to just select it and just drag it on top of the spreadsheet. And just like that, it has now been dropped into our spreadsheet. But again, I don't want it to be that big, so I'm just going to go and make it a little bit smaller, maybe like that. There we go. And I'm happy with that. Already, it looks pretty good. But what is a spreadsheet without a table? So let's go and add in our first table. Now, I'm going to go and just select the table option right here. And as soon as I do, there's a bunch of options that you can use. There's just some normal ones with like a header and a sidebar. There's one with just a header. There's one with a header, a sidebar, and a footer. There's even one with like a checklist already built in, right? But I'll show you how to also create these a little bit later on. Now, I'm going to go and use this one right here. So I'm just going to select it. And I'm going to go and use this little circle on top to move it into the position where I want it to be. But what I can see immediately is there's a lot more columns and rows than what I would actually need. So there's a few ways to go and remove these. Now I can go and individually use those parallel lines at the bottom and delete or add what I want. Or if I select this entire thing, right, notice at the bottom, there's like a little, like half a square, if you want to call it that. And I can then also use that to literally remove lines, columns, rows, whatever it is. Now, I think for this, I need about like 4 rows and 3 columns, I think should work. And there we go. Now, we're going to start by adding in some information here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and rename this specific table. Now, you'll see throughout the session, I'm going to go and rename this, everything that we add individually. And at the end, it will kind of like all fit together. You'll see why I did all of that. There's a bit of a method to the madness, right? So let's start by just saying that firstly, we're going to look at methods of travel, right, over these different bridges. Now, I've got that in there, and we're going to look at the amount of people that travel by foot, by car, and by cycle, right? And we're going to look at 3 different bridges. So we're going to look at the Brooklyn Bridge, the Washington Bridge, as well as the San Francisco Bridge. Now, what I realized is that I actually wanted like a total, but not at the bottom, but on the side. So I'm going to go and again, use these lines here to go and add another column and to remove that row right there. And again, right here, I'm just going to say total. And just like that, we've got our first little chart in here, table, sorry. And we're going to go and drop in some random information here. Now, on the Brooklyn Bridge, we realized that we've got about 1,200 people that travel there by foot. By car, we've got 2,300. By cycle, we've got 750. In the Washington Bridge, I've got 2,300, 4,500, and 920. Now, all I'm doing is I'm just filling in my information, pressing tab, and it's jumping into the next cell. And as soon as I want to go to the next row, I'm just pressing enter. So it then knows, okay, you're done with this row. We're going to jump into the next row. So let's do that again. We're going to say, let's say 2,700, 6,500, and 1,030. There we go. Now we've got all of this information in here, but as we can see, the total column is empty at the moment. Now, we probably would want information in there. And there's a few ways of doing it. So you can, as you would probably have done in any other application, go and press equals. And notice how in the format bar, it has now opened all of our functions options, and there's a bunch of formulas that you can use here. The great thing is you don't have to go and search through this entire list. I mean, this is quite long if what you're looking for is a sum or a total. This is a really, really long list to go through. So you can go and search for it in here. And you can then say sum, yeah, that's the one I'm looking for, select it, and then do everything that it says. Or there's an easier way. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select these cells, right? I've selected it. And now notice at the bottom of the screen, there's an option that says, oh, here's your sum, here's an average, a minimum, a maximum, as well as the counter data, right? So all of it is right there. All I have to do is decide which one I want, and then literally just click it and drag it into the cell. So we want the sum, so I'm going to select it, and I'm going to drag it into that cell and let go. Great. Now, that's perfect because now we already have like the total for that one bridge, which is brilliant, but not really all of the data. Now, I can obviously go and say, okay, equals or select everything and drag it in again. But that's a bit of the longer route of doing this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select that cell, and notice at the bottom of that cell, there's a yellow dot. So I can then select that and then drag that formula down. And just like that, it's filled in the sum for all of those rows as well. So now all of them have a sum in by literally just adding it into one and then selecting that yellow dot and adding it into all. Great. Now, this is perfect, but as we mentioned, we kind of do want it to have a bit of a visual appearance as well. So let's go and add in our first chart. Now, there's a bunch of charts that you can choose from, and it's absolutely amazing. So let's go and select chart here. And you'll notice that as soon as I do, like I mentioned, there's a ton of them that you can choose from. There's bars, there's lines, there's pie charts. And these are all 2D. And then if I swipe, I'm going to go into like different colors. So you can go and customize this to whatever it is that you are looking for. There's even some 3D ones right here, and they're absolutely amazing and super interactive as well. And then there's also an interactive chart, which we will talk about a little bit later on. Now, let's look at these 3D ones. And I'm kind of just going to go with this normal bar graph right here. And as soon as I select it, it might just need like a second to load, and it's going to drop into our spreadsheet. And there we go. I've kind of now just moved it along, but notice what happens in that chart. It's saying region 1, region 2, and it's got April, May, June, July. Nothing with what our table is all about. I mean, our table is looking at methods of travel by foot, by car, by cycle, and over 3 different bridges. That doesn't really work for us. But all I want to do is go and add in my own chart data. So I'm going to select add chart data. And now my cursor, notice just below it, there's like a little graph. So I know whatever I'm going to select is going to be added in for this chart. So we want to look at the Brooklyn Bridge, the Washington Bridge, as well as the San Francisco Bridge. Great. Now, as I've done that, notice how it's added in each one of them in a different color blue, and all of their data is there. I can see, okay, this is Brooklyn, Washington, San Francisco. There's that legend to show it to me. But maybe what I realized is I want to see the bridges compared to the methods of travel and not this way around. So all I'm going to do is at the bottom, it's currently saying plot rows as series. So I can select it and say, no, plot columns as series. And notice how it now has the bridges at the bottom and their methods of travel on top. So completely up to you how you want to do this. If you maybe at a later stage realize, oh, this is not what I wanted, go and change it up, right? Okay, now let's start by just looking at a few editing options for this chart that we've added in. Now, in the formatting options, as you can see, there's chart styles here. So it's just going to like jump into like a different color. We're currently selected with the blue. There's the orange and greenish one. There's only like warm colors. So completely up to you what you want to do here. There's the legend. So at the moment it's selected. If I unselect it, it's going to take it away. And if I add it in, it's back again. But what I did realize though is I don't necessarily want this legend to be in a row like this. I kind of want it to be in a list so that it's easy to understand. I mean, that looks good, but I just think it might look better if it's actually in a list. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use these white blocks and literally just move it closer. And notice how it now starts creating that list for us. And all I'm going to do is just move it into the side right there. Great. Now we're going to jump back into our chart and go into the chart formatting option 0. But I also want to add a title onto this. Remember, I mentioned earlier on, there's a little bit of method to the madness here. I'm going to add a title to everything that we do. So I'm going to go and add this title. And we're just going to say methods of travel chart. And there we go. We've added that in there. And again, I can kind of like go and change the font, change the colors. So if I decide, oh, maybe I kind of like want it to be different, maybe something like that, I can select that. There's a few options for me at the bottom to then also say, oh, the chart depth should be a little bit deeper. And notice how it kind of like just brings out all of these shapes more and more, literally as I'm just dragging on it. I can go and say, oh, my bar shape should not be rectangular, but circle. And then it changes it into like a circle design for me. I can go and change the gap size, add a shadow, add a blur, change the opacity of it. It's completely up to me. And maybe even at a later stage, you realize, oh, I didn't actually want the column chart. I actually wanted like a 3D bar chart. You can go and change it. Completely up to you how you want to do this. And like I mentioned, if you decide to do it later on, very easy to change it up. Now, if we go and look at the axis settings that we've got here, I can then even go and say, oh, I want the axis name. I want the axis scales to be linear or or in a different kind of shape, right? Same as the source data. So if I actually don't want the source data here, so at the moment you can see it's kind of got numbers. If I wanted currency or percentages, I can go and change it up to whatever it is I want to do. If we jump into series right here, I can then go and add some value labels here. And then in the arrangement, I can lock this into place to make sure it doesn't really like move around as I'm moving other things into my spreadsheet. Great. Now let's go and add a few extra information into this. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom. And again, I'm just going to go and add in another image right here. So we were currently like working in that numbers option. So just give me 1 second. Let me just get that file up here again quickly. There we go. Awesome. So I'm going to go and add in our second photo. And I think it's this one here. I'm literally just going to click it and drag it in again. And there we go. Now, again, I'm just going to go and move this and make it a little bit smaller so that it actually fits in. And there we go. Now, for the second part of this, we want to just have a look at the amount of tourists that visit these different locations. So I'm going to go and add in another table here. But this time, instead of working with that one, let's go for one that has a footer in as well. So I'm going to select it. And again, you'll notice it kind of just like drops in. I'm going to move it to the side here. And there we go. Now, I don't need all of these, so I'm going to go and remove them. Something like that, I think should work. Great. Now, what we want to do is we're going to go and look at our bridges on this side here. So we're going to say Brooklyn, Washington, and San Francisco. And on this side here, we want to look at the different months that with tourists over these bridges, right? So we're going to look at, let's say, April. And again, I don't want to go and fill in May and June. It should kind of like realize that this is what I want to do. So all I'm going to do is select it. There's that yellow dot again, so I can just click it and drag it in, and it will drop in there for me. And then all I'm going to do is say total here. Now, we're going to go and rename this again by just saying tourists in thousands. So I'm not going to go and write out like 12,000. I'm just going to say 12, and we'll all know what it means, right? So let's say 11, 9, and 10. And again, what I'm going to do is just press enter. It's going to jump into the second row. We're going to say 7, 11, and 12, enter, and second row. And then 6, 5, and 13. And there we go. Now, if you wanted to go the longer route and kind of like get a total, again, like I mentioned, you can press equals. All of the formulas pop up here, but you also don't have to go and select that. If we want to do something like just selecting all of that, we can select it and press enter, and it will calculate all of that for me. We're going to go and select that yellow circle that we've got and just drag it across so that it puts in all of the information for me. And now very clearly we can see that the bridge that has the most tourists is San Francisco, but we kind of like want to put this in a chart. But we noticed earlier on, we added in the charts, and only then did we go and add in our information. If you have your chart selected, like what I do at the moment, and I then go into chart here, and let's do maybe this one here this time. I'm going to select it. And notice how it's now already added in our information. So I can see, oh, it's got Brooklyn, Washington, San Francisco, and it's got April, May, and June. All of our data is already there. So I don't have to then go and add it in manually. If I've got my table selected and I then add in my chart, it will drop in for me very, very easily. Cool. Now let's just go and change this up again a little bit. Let's maybe do that one right there. We'll go and add another title in here. So we'll call this tourists chart. And I'm going to go and select this legend and maybe just move it down a little bit so that it's not as on top of that title as well. Great. Now we've had a look at quite a few things on this specific sheet, but what I do want to do is I kind of want to jump into a new sheet, because in a separate sheet, I want to start having a look at some of the repairs and maintenance that kind of has to be done on these bridges. So we've got our sheet 1 here, and we're just going to tap on the plus right there, and it's going to create another sheet for us with another table. Now, I don't want to go and add in those bridges names again. I'm just going to go in here, and I'm just going to go and select them. So I'm going to select, copy, and I'm going to go and paste them in here using Command V. And just like that, it's pasted in. What I do realize again is we don't need all of that. We kind of want to look at something like that. And we're going to look at the maintenance that needs to be done on these bridges. So I've decided that we're going to look at maybe some metal poles that need to be replaced. Maybe there are some bricks that need to be replaced. And then also maybe, let's see, what else can there be? Let's say maybe some ropes. There we go, right? And then on this side here, we'll have a total again. Okay. Total actually not needed here. So we'll just kind of like delete this one right here. And there we go. Now we've got that already in there, but what I want to do is again, just kind of like add in this information. So I'm just going to say the Brooklyn Bridge needs 3 metal poles replaced, 6 and 9. And bricks, we need 200, 170, and then 250. Ropes, we're looking at 10, 17, and 23. Okay. Now I've added this information in here, but what really needs to happen is as soon as it's above a certain amount, it should tell me that, oh, this is a high risk, and maybe just highlight it so that we know, okay, this is really important. This needs attention as soon as possible. So I'm going to go and select this. And I'm not going to go and select this entire table, because if I do that, and let's say I say everything that's higher than 5 should be highlighted, but that's only relevant to the metal poles. So if I say higher than 5, everything on this side here will be highlighted in red. So not relevant to the metal. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select the metal here, and I'm going to go into my format and select cell. And at the bottom, there's an option that says conditional highlighting. Now that's what we want to do. We want to go and add a rule that says if it's above 5, it should be highlighted in red so that it gets my attention and I know this needs urgent attention. So I'm going to go and say add rule. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that we then have this choose a highlighting rule option. And there's, again, a lot of options that you can choose from, like ABC, dates, duration, blank, whatever it is. And I'm going to say if it's greater than 5, it shouldn't be highlighted in green, but rather in red. And there we go. Just like that, it's now highlighted everything that is higher than 5. And I know, okay, Washington and San Francisco needs urgent attention for replacing those metal poles. And I can do the same with like the bricks. I'll go in and select it. I'll say conditional highlighting, add a rule, and I'll say, let's choose greater than, let's say 200. And notice that because that one is 200 on the dot, it actually won't highlight it. So if I then go and change this to, let's say 201, it's then going to start by updating it for me. So it's very easy to then literally just add in all of these little things. And as soon as I'm done, let's say the Washington Bridge's poles have been replaced. There's now only one that still needs to be done. I can add it in and it won't highlight it anymore. So I know that my sheet will always be up to date. But it doesn't kind of like end there, because what I want to do is I want to add in another column after this. And that should actually give me a bit of a drop down to say, is someone working on it? Has it been replaced, or no one is aware of it yet? So I'm going to go and select that entire column. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say add a column after, right? So I want it after it. There we go. And here we're going to say metal awareness, right? So there we go. And again, I'm going to go into my highlighting rules right here, into the cell options. And we're going to go and select not automatic, none of these I need. I need not a tick box, not a star rating, not a slider, not a stepper. I want a pop-up menu, right? We want that little drop-down menu. There we go. And notice that it's now changed here to item 1, item 2, item 3. And I want to change this to, is someone aware of this? Yes. No. Or working on it, right? So there we go. Now we've got these 3 options that will appear as soon as I select that dropdown. At the bottom, it says start with first item. I don't want to do that because the first item says yes, but I don't necessarily know whether it's going to be yes. So I'm going to select that and say start with a blank. And there we go. Again, I'm going to go and select all of these to add it into all of them. Now that it's there, notice as soon as I select that cell, there's that little drop down that appears next to it that I can then select and say, is someone working on it? Yes, no. Let's say yes. Washington Bridge, yep, working on it, right? And San Francisco, nope, no one knows of it just yet. So it's very, very easy to literally then just go and add in like these little drop downs. And the same thing for those checkboxes that I showed you earlier on. You can then literally just go into, instead of pop-up menu, there's a little tick box that you can add in there. So really, really easy to go and do that. Great. Now, the other things that we've kind of realized is these bridges are not in alphabetical order. So how do I sort this out for me? Now I can go onto the top of that column, and next to the A, there's a drop down again. So if I select it, you'll see I can say sort ascending or descending, even add in filters. So if I only want to see the Brooklyn Bridge, it's right there waiting for me. All I have to do is select Brooklyn, and it's going to show me only the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, I want to sort this in ascending. So just like that, we now have Brooklyn, San Francisco, Washington, instead of Brooklyn, Washington, San Francisco. Very, very easy to go and do things like that. Now, we were talking about this thing of me renaming everything constantly. And I mentioned that there's a bit of a method to that madness, right? So I want to just quickly jump back into that sheet while I'm busy talking to someone about this. And instead of having to go into that sheet and like scrolling up until the very bottom to go and see that chart, maybe I'm busy here and someone's like, oh, Alex, didn't you mention something about like the amount of tourists that visited those bridges? Can we just quickly backtrack to that? So now instead of having to go to sheet 1 and scrolling down, if I hover my cursor on top of sheet 1, next to it, again, there's a little drop-down icon. I can select it. And there it says, oh, you've got this table here, methods of travel. You've got this chart. You've got another table. Okay, did you guys want to see the chart or the table? Oh, the chart. Cool. Let me select that for you. And it's going to jump in directly to that specific chart right there. I don't have to go and worry about how am I going to find this, or now I have to scroll through this entire spreadsheet again to get to it. I use that drop down and very easily it takes me directly to it. And as soon as it's selected, notice how it also highlights what information it's using. So it's using from this table right here, and I can see it's looking at April, May, and June for Brooklyn, Washington, and San Francisco. Really, really amazing to know that you can do that. Now, let's talk about sharing, because sharing this is something that's probably very important. Now, there's a few ways of doing this. You can use the collaborating option that I mentioned earlier on. And when you actually do, the collaborating option creates an online version of your document. So it's kind of going to be saved into your cloud. And the great thing about it is you can then share it with anyone, whether they have an Apple device or not. All you have to do is say collaborate. And you'll notice that as soon as I do that, it opens up with this little share file pop-up menu. And I can then go and email it, send it as a message, or copy the link. And this is the one I use most. I always say copy the link, and I can then say anyone with the link can make changes, right? So I can go and change those privacy settings there, and I can say share. So it would copy this link, and I can then go and email it to everyone that needs to collaborate with me on this. Now, why would I want to collaborate? Well, maybe you and your colleagues are all creating this spreadsheet together. They have some information, you have some information. So everyone needs to just bring it all together. And that's where collaboration comes in really, really handy. Because essentially you're all working on this document live, and anything that you change, they can see, and anything they change, you can see. So really, really amazing to know that you can do that. And like I mentioned, they don't need to have an Apple device to collaborate with you. All they need is that link. They'll click on that link and create an Apple ID, and they're ready to go. So really, really amazing to know that you can do that. Now, the other ways of sharing this is if you go to File, you can say export to, and notice there's a bunch of options, right? You can go and export this to a PDF or into Excel. So if you're sending this to someone that doesn't have a Mac and they need to use Excel, export it into Excel. It's going to create an Excel version on your Mac, and you can send it to them very, very easily. And as soon as they send you back that Excel sheet, and maybe you don't have Excel, it will open up in Numbers. So you don't have to worry about compatibility. It works both ways. And then there's this option called revert to. Now, let's quickly talk about that. I'm going to go and save this just like that, untitled, right? And I'm going to go and make a few changes here. So I'm going to go and select this photo and delete it. I'm also going to go and delete this chart here. I'm going to save again and delete this photo here, and maybe also this chart right here. And again, I've saved it. Now, you'll agree with me that if you press save on any other application where you've kind of like created things, as soon as you press save, like this is your version, you're kind of like stuck with it, right? There's no going back to, oh, I want that. I realized maybe 2 months later on, I actually want that photo back, or I actually want that chart back. Well, you've pressed saved, right? This is what you have. There's no going back. If you want it back again, you have to go and add it in manually. Well, because you're using Numbers, you can actually do this option, like I mentioned, revert to. I'm going to go into File, revert to, and I can say browse all versions. Now, as soon as I do that, notice this little timeline that appears. And I can then go and see every single version of this document that was created. So on this one right here, I can see, oh, yeah, everything is gone already. Right? There's no images, there's no charts, nothing. So you want to go back one maybe, Okay, yeah, we still have that option right there with the tourist, but on this side, the images are kind of like gone. So we want to go back another one maybe. Now let's just quickly load this version here. It shouldn't take too long, but there we go, right? So again, everything's kind of like gone. So let's go back another one. And this one has everything in. So now that I found the version that I want to go back to, I'm just going to click on restore. And it will very quickly just load that version back onto my screen. And this is what I'm stuck with again. I've got all of my photos, I've got all of my charts back without having to go and do it manually. So it's really, really amazing to know that you can do that. And that kind of brings us to the end of our session. So from my side, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you learned something from the session and that you will use numbers a little bit more productive going forward. If you've got any question, post them in the chat or Q&A. I will stay online for a few more minutes to answer any questions that you might have. But from my side, thanks for joining. Have a wonderful Tuesday afternoon. And I hope we see you online again soon. Cheerio, everyone.